Zonja dhe zotrinj, zonja dhe zotrinj, ju ftojmë të hyni në sallë dhe të uleni në vendet tuaja. Fillojmë pas pak. Zonja dhe zotrinj, ju ftojmë të hyni në sallë dhe të uleni në vendet tuaja. Ju kujtojmë të fikni celularët ose t'i vendosni ata në modalitetin pazile. Fillojmë në pak qaste. Zonja dhe zotrinj, ju ftojmë të hyni në sallë dhe të uleni në vendet tuaja. Ju kujtojmë të fikni celularët ose t'i vendosni ata në modalitetin pazile. Fillojmë në pak qaste. Zonja dhe zotrinj, vjojmë me paraqitjen e tretë të projekt propozimeve për konceptimin e masterplanit të Kampusit Universitar Aleksandër Moisiu Durrës. Ftojmë në skenë skuadrën e kryesuar nga studio FRPO Rodriguez and Orwell. Do ndjekim 20 minuta prezantim dhe më pas 10 minuta pyetje përgjigje me jurinë ndërkombëtare. Ndjekim projekt propozimin e tretë.
Okay, it's the moment.
Sí.
Yeah, I think so. Hello. So I think we are ready. The counter is also already coming down. I was thinking that after the presentations we saw that Denmark unfortunately didn't make it to the World Cup, that Belgium and the Netherlands are good contenders, but Spain is rising, so you know it's a good moment to start. So I was just going to present for a second this story that we have told, the story of findings and recovery. This story is a story, of course, about architecture, but not only about architecture. It's a story about landscape, about the territory, about resources, about future development. It's a story that talks about also water, but not only rainwater or salted water, but also underground waters from the aquifer that we have below our feet. And it's a story, finally, that talks about the public space, and a story that talks about the space between things. So for this story, the storyteller today is going to be Fernando Rodriguez, my partner. I am Pablo Oriol from FRPO, and I have to just present quickly the team that we are accompanied with. They are here, of course, with us. Porras La Casta Arquitectos and Walk Architecture and Landscape from Madrid. They are the designers of beautiful public spaces around the world in different places and territories, but also of recovering landscapes. They have a wide experience on this, so we wanted to be accompanied by someone that could understand the territory in a deep way. We have also a studio from Tirana. They have a local knowledge of the place. They have been working on working many years on the Durana strategic projects. And we also had a very strong group of technical consultants, among which we want to just talk about Teo Lopez, which is the most renowned energy consultant in Spain. And he has worked along with the Geothermal and Geologic European Institute in Spain from CSIC, which is the main investigation institution, and that has helped us to work on this. So this is the team that we have been working on, and I just leave this to Fernando to start the story.
Okay, thank you very much, Pablo. Yes, we're going to tell the story about findings and recovery. It's not working very well, right? Is that better? Much better. Okay.
No, I think it's too big.
Okay,
It's
let's start. Yeah, as Pablo was saying, the form between things, which is the name of our proposal, which explains itself pretty well, is a story of findings and recovery in 7 chapters, which allows us to get to the core challenging competition, talking about 7 different issues. Being the first one, this idea of finding everything we needed to design this project already here, already in the place. This territory, we know a lot about that after 2 presentations already, has suffered a lot of geological and hydrological transformations, also political and economical ones. Each of them has produced a very specific landscape, beautiful landscapes that today might be neglected, but very beautiful indeed, as we have seen in the introduction video this early morning. So our strategy regarding the first findings has to do with the fact that we preserve the old, provide new objects like these ones, or the ones you can see in the model on stage, and combine them, trying to find the best organization to settle old and new ones on a recovered landscape. This is a story about single objects, single shapes, very direct, simple but different, no? Providing a single identity for single programs, and that can be easily interchangeable. No? This is also a story of master planning, which allows different architectures, also maybe architectures from other teams in this competition, to be part of the main idea. Master planning, as we have said before, is not that much about buildings, but about the form between things. It's not about probably the well-known megastructural approaches from the 1950s in the universities across Europe that we all know well, but probably about a more carefully way inserting programs in independent elements that can be approached in different phases. This all happens, of course, in a specific territory, which goes from the wetlands to the beach. No? A territory waiting for its logic to be unveiled. A horizontal territory with no reference at all. We all know that. We have been here, all of us, from many times already, which is organized in different layers, no? With urban artifacts, existing infrastructure, this new infrastructure, which is the railway, which is an amazing opportunity to link the whole area to the metropolitan area, an agricultural pattern, green areas, and also a very strong and present water system. We all know about that after some presentations. These layers are organized, are taken into account, are the layers that we use to design the new proposal, thinking that they also provide the logics to a future development of the whole area, right? The campus would be like a prototype to develop the whole area in different ways. In this superblock model that we understand, it's a very simple and direct approach, provides different kind of percentages of the different elements that are going to be used in the project, like the footprint, reforestation, water surfaces, permeable ground, and roads, in a way that these guidelines can provide different approaches to, of course, the campus superblock, but also to generate industrial or logistic superblocks, to maintain or remake the agricultural superblocks, or even to talk about what happens in this residential area to the south that needs to be reorganized without being completely substituted. This contains as well the logics to the extension, to the future or possible extension to the campus, no? Or the campus to the west, again, in a way that what we are providing is a prototype for the development of a bigger territory. Well, form matters, but not so much the form of things as the form between things. This sentence by architect and professor Stan Allen, which has been with us for many years already, is very clear about what we understand that a campus master plan should provide, which is public free space for things to happen. Yeah, indeed, a very important public space in the middle, which is a big void, which is a Mediterranean public space paradigm. No, the proposal tries to embrace the center of the master plan with our reforested forest, tries to place the buildings, different buildings, to the edges, to the ring, to the outer ring, to maximize this void that takes the cars outside, no, placing them, making them circulate around in a ring road, and maximizes pedestrian space. This central area, which we call the spine, it's provides like these public spaces that are really the most important areas where university life takes place, right? The exterior areas where institutional events, random events, or spontaneous meetings take place, like giving a real character of university life. This spine, no, is composed of two elements, the so-called carpet, which is about grounds, and the so-called pergola, which is a light infrastructure that connects all the buildings, providing something very simple, no, like shadow and character to this public space. Both elements intertwist one with the other and can be easily feasible in different stages of the implementation of the master plan. And regarding to the first one, the ground also incorporates this beautiful idea of learning grounds through the work of our Milan-based Albanian artist Adrian Peci, which is teaming up with us in this for this competition, providing this kind of learning grounds that talk about the process of learning, and providing as well. It's the same that happened before. Okay, and providing different situations, different episodes within the main public space. The second element, the pergola, has to do with traditional elements throughout the Mediterranean area, and it's like a very simple, painted concrete structure that allows connecting, provides shadow, and also build a series of episodes around this public space, which intertwist one with the other, no? Like in the form of a main entrance to the west, a central agora with a tribune in the center, a central agora with the dry fountain also next to the tribune, kind of cherry gardens and fruit trees, different orchards or even meadows for resting. These are some images, images of this space in between the buildings that are formed with different features, but mainly with grounds and this intertwisting element that also it's generating this kind of sequence of different spaces throughout the different areas where it collides in a way with the proposed buildings. The natural history of this territory is it's very rich And it kind of allows us to think about the idea of third nature. No? We all know about this first nature, which was the native marshland landscape thousands of years ago, which became a second nature, a man-made agricultural landscape in the second half of the 20th century, and which we provide to transform again through this third nature idea or performative landscape, providing the conditions for a development of a locally embedded new nature that will support new economies. This is a very important part of the project because kind of provides the conditions for this natural surrounding to really happen in such a salty and not that good environment as we have seen already. This performative landscape is built out of three actions. No? The first one has to do with drainage, waterways, and water surfaces. The second one has to do with the building soft hills and mounds, which provide like new soil for these trees, for these pine trees to grow, to properly grow. And the third one is a more controlled nature within this public space of the spine, which is like more related to gardening and this kind of recreational spaces. This provides like a series of a sequence of different sections, no, in which the whole space of the university is modeled out of these three actions, right? Like the perimeter ring road, the perimeter rain gardens, the in-between forest hills, and the pergola within the spine in the middle. This surrounding nature that it's filled with wilderness and also with water, and that keeps the cars outside the center of the project, has different shapes, and it's like always intertwists with the spine beneath the buildings. No, it provides this kind of back accesses to the main programs, which then lead to the main public space in the middle. The spine of this void, this public space, which is, as I said, the core of the master plan, is made out of four main kinds of landscape. No, so-called hardscape, about like like pavements that provide like circulation and meetings and all that stuff. Softscapes, which is about like talking about different kinds of vegetation which take the nature of the area inside the plot. Ground and waterscapes, which kind of recover this beauty embedded in the water.
A reminder about the time. 5 minutes remain for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. And eventscape, which provides situations for big meetings and university life to happen. There are some images of the back gardens. This is about also visibility and feasibility of a public investment, which for us it has been like something we have been struggling a lot by making this master plan, because I mean we needed to place like 4,500 students inside, which is a lot, and we thought that there was also an opportunity within this territory to think about like making the public investment visible and connecting to make the university connecting to the city and make the citizens connecting to the university throughout or by means of these student residents. So some kind of financial building strategies will provide us like the idea that the residents and also the energy program might act as an asset, an asset that can easily, from a very compact shape to a more disaggregated and face-able group of elements, could be interesting for a public investment and for a private investor, and provide like a kind of public and private partnership. And therefore connecting the students to the territory throughout the views from these residents and the citizens to the university, with this element acting as a reference in this horizontal landscape. Everything is part of something bigger. That's something we all know. Ecosystems are working before and after we come there as architects. What we are proposing is an ecosystem which acts also like an energy system that intertwists like water and sun, providing or generating like a whole and complete water cycle management that allows the use of an aquifer that it's like more or less 40 meters below the phreatic level in this place, as we have researched it with this group of engineers, and an open loop geothermal system that provides like a thermal ring road for these buildings with a temperate water that lows a lot like the energy needed for heating and cooling the buildings, and that also takes water into a whole energetic system, merging rainwater with the phreatic, the aquifer, the irrigation water, and organizing them all. What happened? Yeah. I'm treating them all in this very interesting building that it's to the left part, to the west part of the university, which is the energy infrastructure. This energy infrastructure acts as a new image for the whole campus. No, this one we can see here, which is also hosting the main parking, the power thermal plant, and the innovation center, and provides like this kind of image of the campus as an energetic awareness, an energetic aware condition that provides like links the campus to a very contemporary debate. No, this is an image of this energy infrastructure that it's closing the campus to the possible or future expansion to the west. Yeah, we're almost finishing. The 7th chapter refers to the fact that universities act as a social infrastructure, right? This image of the FAU by Vilanova Artigas, this beautiful, amazing project we all know, that it's talking about free ground, it's talking about like building open architectures for things to happen, underlays like the idea that what we are providing is much more like a series of guidelines to build some buildings, no? Than architectures themselves, no? Like through making all buildings elevate themselves from the ground and generating this free ground, like trying to build always with concrete structures and with light programs on top, and making patios inside every building, providing like passive measure envelopes for each of them, can really host these programs in a very simple way in each shape, no? While maintaining character and in general terms, as the general guideline architecture than as build-centered design architecture, which is what we were wanted to present here, right? I'm finishing right now with a kind of epilogue that it's like summarizing these ideas.
Please, your time is expired.
Thank you so much.
We'd like to invite Juan
the
Tur,
rest
our
of the
landscape
team
architect,
to the stage.
and Doriana, our local.
Now the members of the jury are welcome for the questions.
Juan.
Okay, aquí, and the middle. Come here. No questions.
If there are no, oh, please, go ahead. Shall I go? So thank you so much. I think it's a wonderful narrative. I think it's very important to underline some qualities, because the responsibility of this campus is the one of proposing a model for the occupation of the surrounding territory. And the fact that you are proposing relations between objects, and also the objects, but the relations between the objects are the most important things. I think it's a very interesting way of proposing a solution for this territory. Topography is used in a very interesting way, but there is a but. We have been hearing about geotechnical difficulties of rising construction, and you are proposing towers. So is there a certain safety in terms of ensuring that towers are possible into a certain degree of cost?
Okay. No, I didn't understand the last part of the question, sorry, João.
You are proposing towers.
Yeah.
Because part of the interesting use of the space as a matrix where your objects float is due to the fact that you are concentrating mass in those towers. We have been hearing that there are geotechnical constraints about building in height in this situation. Do you have a clear certainty that it is possible to build these towers within normal costs?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. This is one of the things that we have been thinking about, of course, when deciding to take the opportunity of concentrating the program, because it was like some of the challenges of this project was the amount of residential. So it was a challenge that we took as an opportunity for all the things that Fernando explained. And of course, this was one of the questions that we posed. We have been working, I mean, the answer is yes, we have the certainty. We have been working in different projects we've been working in Albania for a couple of years. We won this competition 2 years ago, a private one with the Rosafa Tower in Skodra. And then now we are doing this public realm competition, which we are pleased of. But in the meantime, we have been working in several vertical projects in the coast, in places near with very similar soil situations to these ones, and we have been developing all these with our different groups of engineers here in Albania. So yes, we have that certainty. There is another thing about building. When you build high, you normally build also low, and that is a problem here, not only for foundations problems, but also for the management of water, which is very shallow. But we are not doing that in this case. No? We are building these towers, but concentrating on leaving the free ground and not doing underground spaces, no? Like big underground spaces, which is not a very good idea, we think, here. Of course, Doriana, please.
But also we have different alternatives for the towers, because we have discussed together a lot about that argument. So we, as Albanian architect, has been very concerned about this argument to maintain low-cost construction. And because of that, we have also proposed another alternative to the towers, which houses the same amount of square meters.
Yeah,
we have shown, but maybe it was too fast in the slides.
I mean, the whole thing, sorry, again, in this case, for us, was to free ground and to concentrate these buildings. But we were not very much on top of the buildings, but looking at what happens in between, as you were saying. So, of course, we will have to develop, and there are many possibilities, as we were showing with that little model. But we thought this one could fit, and it works technically.
I think it's very interesting, this, let's say, proposal of two totally opposite green spaces. One that is really nearly like a jungle, untouched, super dense on the outside that is framing the whole campus. And then this series of open squares with very, let's say, orchestrated artificial green areas that are very differentiated. The whole competition is about the master plan, right? It doesn't say you have to, give us a 1 to 50 drawing that we can calculate the costs, but it's about how will this plan develop? What is the potential of development? So it's also quite open requests. And before this background, I wonder a bit about the buildings, right? If I imagine to have two totally opposite public spaces, or one is that is nearly hidden space or natural space, and one that is more like a classical campus space, how do you read or intend to develop the buildings in between? Because there was also quite a lot of focus during the presentation on this question of ecology of the campus. So I wonder about this object. Is this just, let's say, symbolic or metaphorical to say you can do 4 totally different interventions, time will tell, or is this already, let's say, architectural design that is detailed, that we should look at that, or is it more kind of an exemplification to elaborate on the potential?
Well, it's a very interesting question indeed, because buildings are designed almost to, maybe not to 150, but they are very, very designed. But what we have tried to step back while designing the buildings. We have to step back, try to understand them. Once we have designed them, trying to understand which were the guidelines that underlay, like in a common proposal, in order to not to get everything so like fixed. No, I mean, of course, we are proposing 5 very specific buildings with sections and plans and atmospheric conditions and public spaces in between, and this kind of sequence of spatial requirements that were on the brief, because it was a master plan brief, but very, very specific in terms of architecture. You're right. But the most important thing for us, it's much more what these 5 examples kind of summarize, right? Like the idea of making the ground floor free, no, reduced to the minimum expression, like the program is laying on the ground floor, concentrate heavy programs on the first floor, which are also accessible, no? Making the first floor also accessible, and try to organize in a very rational way the upper programs always around the patio. You want to add something?
And you were asking, Christian, about the pergola also, no? About why that element. So this thing that Fernando was saying about the connection of the free ground, that's the whole thing about the pergola. No? It's, of course, an element that can be, in a very cheap way, can be connecting everything and can give an image to something that will develop in time and will be maybe part of, made by several hands, no? Different hands. But this element, it's working with all these conditions of the ground, of the free ground, of the 2 levels, etc. But it's also giving, in a very low budget solution, giving like a specific character to this campus. This is also the reason for that, of course.
Sorry. But the pergola is not just a pergola, it's also a bridge. You can walk on top.
It is that just in several points, just in some points. It's not that you can walk around it, but you can use it to walk up here, or there is this element that is the tribune, or there is a ramp that goes up and uses part of the pergola to go to the upper level of the residence. So it's a pergola, but it's also, it's accidents, like usable accidents to connect, to bring the ground to the first level at some points near the buildings.
Why I cannot go all the way on the bridge?
Well, that's a big question that we have been like asking among us many times. I think the answer is that no need for that, because you can walk underneath, you can really go on the shadow, or when rains, when you have rain, you can just walk around the whole thing, and no need for having, you know, bridges connecting all the buildings. This is about landscape and free ground.
But then why should it be one thing all continuous? Like, couldn't be fragments? Like, why you need the figure of the single element?
It was a very simple question. It was about being able to go from one side to the other without getting wet when raining. No, it was like this kind of super functional decision, because we had, as you have seen, or maybe you didn't, many different options. But in the end, we decided to make it super simple. No, it's something that takes you from the main access to the east to the secondary access to the west, and that allows you to leave your car here, and to get to every place or any place without getting wet or on the shadow. No, a very functional condition.
May I do a very innocent criticism of it? I think it's a bit too thin. Like, you see in the renderings that there's not much shadow. It probably should have been a bit fatter. No? Like, why you didn't?
We did it low, because no, we did it as low as possible, okay? Because we thought you have to connect from down to up, okay, with these connections. But we did low in purpose, because we are in a Mediterranean situation in which you have to be, you know, covered very near your shadow, okay? Not with high canopies, but with low things. And it's like 280 inside, or 3 meters inside, I think, and it's 450 wide, okay? So it's also a matter of a delicate element, something that can be very, very cheap and very easy to work with. No? There was an image of Matías Gerrit, El Pájaro de Fuego, that beautiful, but very cheap concrete sculpture in Guadalajara, Mexico, which has had a very powerful impact in the area as an attractor of public space, no? With very low means, very easy means. But maybe you're right.
Jesus Christ. No, I'm thinking of something like Ibirapuera canopy by Niemeyer, and it's really, really large.
Yes.
Because it, in order to produce a lot of shadow and to generate the climatic thing, it needs a bit this section. But okay, it's an open discussion.
We were, 1 month ago, Fernando and I, we were in Ibirapuera, and we were talking about this. But that's another thing. It's a huge element, huge, very, very deep, very deep. No, we didn't want to make it so huge, but very delicate.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I want to congratulate you on the material that you're showing. The drawings are beautifully drawn, the model, everything, the atmosphere that you are conveying through the images. I guess that my only question, because you responded not only in the presentation that you made, but also through the material to all the questions one may have, would be how this canopy, that it's kind of like the signature, I would say, no? The thread that connects everything, that has a specific geometry, which is different from the straight geometry, that I think it's perfectly, it's fantastic actually. But maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on how this broken geometry creates in-between spaces, that I think is the intention, and connects existing with the new, and how this master plan could be implemented or somehow connected to what happens also in the rest of the area, if there is an intention for that to happen, of course.
It's working? Yeah. Yeah, so indeed, it comes together with the question about why not making a bigger straight line and more clear. It's connecting from A to B, but at the same time creating spaces, as you have mentioned. We wanted, from the beginning, we understood that there were 3 areas One was like the entrance area on the right side. We had a central area, like we call the central agora, which is the largest space that we wanted to keep it intentionally open. Even you see this space without trees, because we see in a university you usually need sometimes big spaces for big celebrations, to make a concert, to make the graduation party, to make the parade. So we needed large spaces that could at the same time be refreshed by this dry fountain that we have during the whole year, always bringing freshness to the space. And we have the central, on the left side, we have the area where we have most of the orchards that in a way they are trying to unify the existing buildings architecture that they have today, different architectural types, different styles. So it's the area where we have a smaller scale, smaller grain, and more dense gardens. So in the end, we have like a collection of different gardens, the entrance gardens towards the residence and the sports area, the central agora, and these smaller orchards. And the pergola itself is really creating and embracing all of these gestures. The tribune here, it's very important. So between the tribune, the dry fountain here, we are really creating this space that works very well between the rectorate, the library, and the sports. So this is like our main public space. And here we provide a smaller scale, smaller gardens, really for creating a small, more intimate scale, no, for the students.
You want to add something? No, I think it's clear. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zonja dhe zotëri, vijmë me paraqitjen e 4 të projekt propozimeve. Vijmë me paraqitjen e 4 të projekt propozimeve për konceptimin e masterplanit të Kampusit Universitar Aleksandër Moisiu Durrës. Ftojmë në skenë skuadrën e kryesuar nga studio Oz Architects. Do të ndjekim 20 minuta prezantim dhe më pas 10 minuta pyetje-përgjigje me jurinë ndërkombëtare. Ndjekim projekt propozimin e 4.
Can we start with oh. It's a bit wrong, So good afternoon. My name is Andreas Caravanas, and together with my partner Stefan de Koning, we are representing OZED, and together we are going to go through our project, Live in Gardens. Maybe Stefan.
Yes, we're here together with our great local team, IRI. They're well represented. We have a long relationship with each other in the business. Felix Landscapers. They are very well known for their Dutch approach in the sense of being experienced in polar landscapes. Also, they work with both greenscape and bluescape. Sabine Marcellus, we have as part of the team for her color and materiality, a great inspiration for this project, and Bureau Milan being very supportive in making a very feasible project. So, a driver to participate in this competition actually is also reflecting a bit on our own work. The Hive is a project in the Netherlands where the old and the new coexist. This is very applicable for this location in Durrës. And here we elevated the existing structure. What that means is that the landscape becomes undulating and the binding factor between the old and the new. And also, main entry zones become part of meeting and collective spaces. Secondly, the offices and me and Andreas are having an exercise in how to reach a Paris-proof approach in potentially every project. Our new office will be a bio-based, fully bio-based and passive building. First of all, student housing is something we are very experienced with, And this is a modular structure which is very adaptive and affordable. Now, within our projects with student housing, we always deal with high densities. But what makes it a proper student destination or place to live? It has to be affordable, effective, but at the same time it needs to be a self-sustaining compound. What we apply here is places to reside and to meet. Sure, color is an iconic instrument to make it a presence in the vicinity. Then the RAVO project in Amsterdam on the right is, you could say, it's like an enclosed enclave. It's in the middle of the CBD, the future CBD to be constructed, so it tries to protect itself from its surroundings. What is relevant here is that the facilities are as such that it's not only for the residents itself, but also an attractor or a hub for students abroad. So what can be a very good strategy to make the projects feasible is to have, we have two exemplary projects which is called more like student hotel mixed with student housing, meaning that residents can leave in the weekend and the rooms can be rented out to temporary visitors. You have a double occupancy and a double revenue. Now, in all the projects we do, in close collaboration with our clients, we create places for the students to meet. It has to be like a mini city functioning on itself. From laundry rooms to lounges to a gym. And the good part of it is it can be also, through membership, for example, become another revenue, another layer of revenue in the project. Then when we look at the site, and finally the project, what is intriguing to us is the kind of tapestry, the patchwork of agricultural context. Yet, at the same time, we know that in the future a lot will be developed. So our strategic approach was to make a walled city, as you like. It is deeply inspired by the patchwork, so it is like a continuous carpet of gardens. And from looking at Durrës, it's been addressed many times today, we actually embrace the medieval history and its walled former city with landmarks. Maybe it refers also a little bit to the kulas and the fortified towers. And this is an inspiration to create a master plan that kind of correlates with this.
So what is important for us from the beginning of the project was that the approach towards the site becomes also a reference for Durrës. So what you see here is how we approach the site. You have this lower level, this donut with housing, and then all the other buildings as transparent lanterns referring to the medieval city. And the way that we created space is through a reference of Oda, where it's a meeting place where in a house where other rooms would meet. So we almost literally started like analyzing the decoration of this space and the centrality of it. And then we come to one of the images that, one of the courtyards that we are creating, that it opens up to the landscape. And it always has this central element that it's the educational building or the public building. And how we came to that. So we took as a given that these buildings exist and also the agricultural grid. So we said, okay, whatever is educational program or administration creates its own identity. The color comes also later. And then what defines also a medieval city or a kind of center of the city is the housing. So what we wanted to do is to create a kind of element that occupies this area and creates the courtyards. But what we didn't want to do, basically, is not to have a modernistic kind of approach. So all this becomes not a linear approach, but it has elements where people meet. So all these courtyards becomes an enfilade on the ground floor. And then what was also important for us is that you have designated areas where you enter to the site, but then all the other site is not linear from A to B, but it creates all these spaces where different circulations meet and occur. So exactly this, the housing stays very low. It's intentionally made in order to create interaction and to activate the level of the ground floor. So not standing buildings, but also all the housing becomes part of the landscape. And no tower, basically. So we don't staple housing. So at the end, you enter to a site when open and closed becomes one. So here you see the plan where all the yellow part it's covered. It's a portico. And then from one side, you have this kind of Mediterranean approach with a portico that opens up in the middle and creates this main square. So we have a definition of squares also. And at the right side, you see that there are all these confetti of uses in the space that generate the space. And the color is something that, of course, we worked with our artists, but we also wanted to make something, to make the squares bold, but also not in a kind of literal way. So we wanted to create for every square an identity that relates to the heritage of Durrës. And then we have the approach. So every courtyard has its own facade, and it again creates a mosaic of different spaces. So from space to space, you are getting to a different geometry. And then this is one of the squares where the pattern of the ground becomes almost a carpet. And together with all the others, they are creating a continuous carpet. And here is the inspiration, the work of Sabine, that we worked together. So both layers are coming back to the project. And then we have the entrance, the main entrance from the axis, where you have the Meet and Innovate building. The transparency of the buildings, you will see also afterwards, relates to a kind of administration that is not hidden. And then all around you have the housing. And then we go to the landscape.
So for the landscape, as explained, it's a continuous carpet. Yet within the courtyard, different landscapes can coexist. Some are more dense than other in its greenery. For example, around the existing study for politics building and the business school, that we envision a more garden-like landscape. As of today, we see the plantations here as well. Others, which are more related to the context and arrival, can be more functioning like piazzas or plazas, also containing more flow and population of people. Now, looking at where we come from, to maintain this landscape and to embrace this landscape, Felix was very clear, we have to stop fighting water and fighting natural elements, but instead of that, embracing this. So the site actually used to be in the Adriatic, and it was, after becoming a lagoon, it was actually poldered into an agricultural site, as of today. Now, urbanization is going to happen, and what we embrace is this, let's say, grid approach of linear canals and master planning. Now, to bring this into the... It's not working?
I think yes.
Okay, thank you. We foresee each landscape can actually have a different theme, and it can have its own character. What is it based on? So, based on the advices we got, the water is actually a combining factor, a connecting factor between all the gardens. As explained very well by 51, is how the context is a polder system, and that means that water should flow naturally. Each garden can have absorb water, release water, and so on. When we look at the site, we envision also the roof to have this function as a retaining element, yet the gardens do the same. In each garden, we have kind of a designated area, a zone, that relates to the main entries of the main buildings, the public buildings. So when you're in one of these gardens, one can imagine after a heavy rainfall to be surrounded by kind of water systems and pools. Yet this can dry out and the water level can change. So it's a mix between a polder and a wadi, I would say. And also the permeable ground floor shows you how each garden is related to the other. When we come to the housing is basically an organizational principle to define the different gardens and piazzas. What we try to achieve is to make a permeable, accessible site where actually everything is also naturally ventilated and undulating. And each room can have a view to the garden it links to. So there's always light conditions and natural ventilation conditions. Also, what you can see is we propose to recess the facade and make kind of a French balcony typology for shading devices. The grid is of such, the system, the building methodology is of such that different typologies can be applied here.
A kind reminder about the time, 5 minutes remain for the presentation.
Thank you. A room without facilities, a double room, and every 20 rooms, more or less, we foresee a common living room. And this is an impression of what it could be. We also have the mini courtyards where many rooms are organized around, creating mini, like micro communities.
And then we come to the educational program that define almost the center of every square, almost like in a medieval city where you have every square with a different program, public program in the middle. So you have Meet Innovate, library, sports arena, and rectorate. So starting from the library, as you see also in the scheme, it's the middle square. It's the square of the city, let's say, where the landscape goes in this building. And you have a stacked program of the library and the museum, and then in the middle it becomes a kind of amphitheater where people can meet, so the whole ground becomes one space. The arena with its own courtyard also, and this is again a kind of the same approach on the facade, where you have stacked again a program of swimming pool, sport facilities and arena on the top, so the swimming pool on the ground, it becomes open to the courtyard. And then the main, let's say, access from the street, and also what you see when you are driving, with the Meet and Innovate building, where basically this red carpet expresses the facade, and again it's a stacked volume with different Meet and Innovate programs. This is how you see almost every square. And then we have the administrational building, which we don't want to hide. So it's part of one of the landscapes. It becomes on the ground a sculptural garden, and then around it, it has also housing. And on top, we also want to, because it's the highest building that we have, I mean, and we are creating this roof garden where you can see the landscape all around. And then going a bit to feasibility and construction. So we have some phases here, but what we are trying to create is a system. So this system can also change according to planning. So we are proposing certain phases here on the way that this can be built, but it's almost an organic kind of process. And the same thing also for construction. We thought that we can even create modularity, so within the site to construct, we don't have big cantilevers for the housing, so we can create all this relatively cheap. And sustainability, obviously there is the environmental sustainability. We don't go for one big gesture, but different types of, as Stefan explained before, the rainwater or the wadis or the cross ventilation that for us was important for the housing. And then the roof and how we can occupy it. And then for financial sustainability, we thought that it's interesting to tackle on that because of our experience also. One part could be, there are three models. One is the idea of occupying the space of housing in areas in a time when students are gone. So in summer, for example, it can be used as a hotel. And then renting out areas for cafes or events, it's the second strategy. And then the last, and that's why we put the arena close to the street, that you can have a more membership also for sports facilities that relates to the city. And we come at the end in a social sustainability where actually by creating all these programs and adding more on the program that you had on the ground floor, we are creating all these courtyards and certain elements can interact within the courtyards. So we are referring directly to Durrës, symbolically because of the skyline and the idea of the medieval city, programmatically on the ground floor and how you can connect to the city and all these courtyards relating back to the city of Durrës. So we have a video, I don't know if it's possible to play, probably you. No music?
It's okay, the music is missing.
It's more about creating, showing the idea of scale and showing all these passages and how these courtyards relate to each other.
A very important choice was to make 3 layers. That means we can be for all the mobile people without any elevators. Everybody can access their house from the ground directly. And student life is really oriented on the grade, on the public domain. A mix of vegetation and porticos protect you from direct sunlight in the summer, and the porticos, of course, also from the rain. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the members of the jury.
The ground floor is, let's say, 80% empty. It's just portico.
We can go back to if you want, to the plan. So it's occupied, the surrounding, it's occupied also from housing.
So there's housing at the ground.
Housing on the run, the periphery, and then inside you have like different meeting rooms or cafes or areas where the students meet. So it's not 80%. Obviously you have the courtyards, that they are landscape, but all the canopy is not, I don't know if you can see it here.
Also, the amenities are planned as kind of pavilions within that space.
So, if you go here.
There's a plan here. I don't know if,
yeah.
So you see all this is housing in 2 levels, and then you have in between almost a kind of break system in order to create this portico.
I wonder a bit about the title, Living Gardens. The proposal is huge courtyards, and they are all more or less all occupied by buildings. If I compare this proposal to the famous university in Paris, Jussieu, you have very small courtyards, and the entire building is lifted one level. And then you have a perception through all these gallery spaces underneath the building, through all these courtyards. But here, with all the buildings inside, the view is always blocked. And I also wonder if the leftover between, let's say, these main buildings and the framing, if this is enough surface to really be recognized as a garden, as a let's say, authentic garden and nothing else. It's, but I'm more kind of wondering, where would you see, let's say, the main perception of this university in terms of an image? You know, if we imagine the university here also wants to attract people from many different places, and what is the, let's say, main trigger point in the image creation that you are proposing?
You want, or? Well, I think there are different layers on the reading of this. So in terms of image, you have what you get when you are outside, like these lanterns of the buildings with administration. But when you are inside, you have this porous kind of carpet with different landscapes. I understand what you are talking about, these framed gardens. The idea is that we wanted to create a system. So the size of the rooms can also vary, and we can have also even thinner bars of, so for example, now we went to a kind of thicker bars, but you can also have thinner bars. It depends on how the system we want to grow.
I think it's important to recognize the open gardens that are facing the streets. Yeah. Making the project more, having more of a rival experiences as well.
Can I just ask you to develop an idea? Because when I look at this plan, it looks like you are designing cloisters with the building in the middle, but this is a bad way of looking at it, because you are actually proposing a very continuous open space with a pergola on the top, which is actually what happens in all the center spaces. So this kind of ambiguity between defining these gardens, limited gardens, with a building in the middle, pre-existing or proposed, and to propose a continuous matrix is only approached by a very shy waterline that crosses everything. Can you develop a little bit more your will of making it continuous, actually?
Yeah.
If it is so, do I read it well?
Yeah, so I think the ambiguity is actually a conscious choice. Because I think there is the freedom to flow through the landscapes, yet at the same time there's this organization of shaded and protected circulation that gives you a double possibility to flow through the project. But it was on purpose that, let's say, the public facilities are linked by gardens and this permeable open space. Regarding the water, the project is literally linked to the canals in the vicinity. So that means, look, in heavy rainfall, the roof, we have a significant roof surface, we acknowledge, that was consciously for bringing all the people down to the ground. This is the first retention layer, and then the gardens itself do the same. That's why I talk about a polder, like the water levels can change during the seasons. So maybe a canal becomes more like a wadi, etc. So that's why the majority of the garden surfaces are actually full ground and not hardscapes. We think in the plazas, piazzas, it's more of a high greenery, canopies, to have this local heat island effect tempered. And that is actually throughout the whole project. We really approach it as a self-sustaining city, and it was conscious to frame it this way because we really believe that the phasing around in the larger zone will be quite rough, honestly. There are logistical businesses being built, there's agriculture which is not always healthy, so it also needs this protection layer.
Is there a parking garage underground?
No, underground, no. So
No.
the parking, as you see also it's mainly related to the main street there, but there is possibility also. So there are two parking layers and a street that goes around. So it can facilitate also logistics and everything.
And a question that I make to you, but it's actually a question for all participants, just because I don't know. What's the dimension of these rectangles, like 350 by something?
This is 100, I think. No, how much was it?
Yeah. You mean the
The
courtyard?
dimension of the whole
No,
thing?
the entire thing. How long it is? The
That's
plot.
It's 500, no, it's 400.
400.
Yeah. And yeah, it's of course very long. And that's why this permeable approach as well.
I mean, I'm fascinated by certain aspects of it. But it's undeniably, particularly you had this argument about financial stability. It's incredibly expensive, this thing, because it's also just, most of the time it's only 2 levels, so the amount of structure for the amount of built surface is not so much. So it is, it's very expensive.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to argue that a
Yeah,
little bit.
please do.
Because to bring the residential so low, we can exclude any elevators or escalators for my part. So making it a low rise is by definition more affordable. Second of all, I think the permeability allows, and also the canopies of the trees and everything allows for a lot of passive cooling potential. So we really also hope that the energy bill can be lower for most of the year. You don't need your air conditioning, and even the mini courtyards that we make help in this a lot. The grid, I mean, every 6 meters we have 6.4 meters we have a column, allowing for this very flexible grid as well, an adaptive grid. It is very slim. The spans are very small. The floor plates can be minimized. And we took a very conventional approach, building it in concrete that we think is locally feasible. So that's the thought process behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Materiality was an issue in order to also create a space that it's feasible.
But then you have rather expensive swimming pools and administration tower, which don't follow that logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the tower is an exception in this. And let's say the reception of the public buildings is kind of shaded as well. That was a conscious choice. And we prefer to have it cantilevered.
But also the tower that you see, because of the mirror, it looks like big cantilever, but it's not a big cantilever. It's quite small, like the cantilever that we are creating. We are basically adding a balcony in a building.
The
So it's
pool
not
is a natural pool. That's the intent. The salt water is in the vicinity.
used. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation and for the work. I have just a couple of questions. I see a lot of very smart strategies here, and I could also understand that how you defend that this is a cheap proposal in terms of the logic that you're using for the structure, for the materiality, and all of that. And also thinking about elements that have like two scopes, right? Like the giving shadow, creating a canopy, and at the same time resolving the housing, the residencies for the students. So my two questions would be, you also mentioned the idea of a fortress for this, creating kind of like a wall that it's inhabited, that creates like a very clear boundary and the sense of inside and outside. So how that connects to the institution being connected to the city, open to the city, to the rest of the site. So are you creating an island? That it's perfectly fine, but then if you could elaborate on that idea. And then for me, the second question would be, you are also talking about the 4 identities, making a distinction between the areas, the formal understanding of each of them, the color, and all of that. How important or instrumental is this idea of the 4 identities? Could be 5, could be 3, could be only 1. How important is the formal outcome of this proposal?
I will talk about the island mainly. I think what you see, it's also like a lot of times this island that you are talking about, it's opening up to the surroundings. So it has designated kind of entrances where the landscape comes in. And because of the porosity, it comes in. But we also think that within the landscape where we are now, anyway, the urbanization will be like very organized. So we are talking about a porous structure that on the ground floor it becomes like porous. And then I'm not so sure that single buildings would also not create this island. Like adding single buildings in an area like this, I don't know if I would argue that it doesn't create an island itself also. And about the color is an added feature. We didn't want to add color in the buildings itself, so the buildings become kind of a neutral elements that they are added in the, and transparency was also important. So the color becomes a pattern that it relates to the heritage and the colors of the city in Albania.
And maybe a little bit also on this landmark. So how the context will develop in the future is so insecure. It's almost like how the fortress of Durrës once arose on reclaimed land. It's a very similar condition, perhaps. So, yeah, I think that's the main idea. Yeah.
But it's not a walled city, eh? It sounds like, but it's not a walled city. Like the ground floor becomes a permeable ground that it can also adjust to the extensions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zonja dhe zotrinj, vjojmë me paraqitjen e 5 dhe të fundit të projekt propozimeve për konceptimin e masterplanit të Kampusit Universitar Aleksandër Moisiu Durrës. Ftojmë në skenë skuadrën.
Headed by Practica, 20 minutes of presentation and then 10 minutes of Q&A.
Can you hear me? Right. Ah, cool. Great. Well, thank you so much to everybody here today. Thank you for your time, to the entire jury, to the competition organizers, and of course to all of you guys. We know it's a big day, and it's never easy to be the last ones to present, but please bear with me for a few more minutes. We're super happy to be here and work on this amazing project. My name is Jose Ramon Sierra. I'm one of the founding partners of Practica, together with Jaime Daroca and Jose Mayoral here. But in our team, we're also working with Studio Rebus, where they're our local architects, also with Ana Hornat, who's our amazing landscape architect from Romania, and with local artist Ledia Costantini. So the first idea that we want to transmit to all of you is that this is not a building. Our proposal is not an enclosed, finished system. Instead, it's an open system. It's something that can evolve over time. It can grow, but it can also shrink in accordance to the university's needs. So we don't really know what the needs of the university are going to be in 10 years' time, or in 15, or in 20. So we wanted to think of a system that allows the university to take agency and modify their campus in accordance to whatever they need in terms of facilities. But it is also a system that is very much grounded in its context. It's related to the material context, the cultural context, and the nature surrounding the site. We started by looking at the history of the place. We looked at the history of Durrës and also at the history of the Adriatic coast. Durrës has this amazing key location. It became the gateway into Via Ignatia, one of the main corridors of goods, of market between the east and the west. But it was also a corridor of ideas. Durrës is a starting point for a journey, an intellectual journey that projects Albania to the global context, as Madam Ministry said at the beginning of the day today. We also looked at the history of the physical context of the site. We found it super interesting, and it's of course marked by this land reclamation process that was carried out during the entire 20th century. That process transformed the marshland into agricultural fields, and they became the framework for informal settlement. But in that process, they also created this system of orthogonal streets and canals that can become the basic tools for the development of a new ecosystem, to regenerate the high salinity soil and to establish a background where communities and knowledge can thrive in the future. And finally, we also looked at the current state of the region of Durrës. We looked at some of the social political aspects, such as the location of different educational pieces of infrastructure, the mobility within the region, and the land use, but also some physical aspects of it, like the location of the natural and artificial green spaces, natural and artificial water courses, and the land coverage. So all of those ideas brought us to think of a concept that revolves around the notion of the grid and the notion of the academic quadrangle that Lorena mentioned before, the quad. Regarding the grid, we looked into a lot of very different case studies. We looked at the Jefferson grid in the US, we looked at the Barcelona grid from the Cerdà plan, or at the Manhattan grid. And we found that there are strengths and weaknesses to all of them, but they become a lot more successful when they allow for diversity within their strict rules, as Kulhas and Sengeli established through their captive globe concept. The second idea that we worked with, that of the quad, was super interesting to us because we find that a lot of the centers of knowledge throughout history were linked to open, regular spaces that organize buildings around them. And those spaces could serve as platforms for the exchange of ideas, for discussions, and for gathering, as Iñaki Avalos beautifully exemplified in his essay, Communal Palaces. So this is our ground floor plan. This is what we came up with. Here you can see that we're working with a concept of the grid, but it's a grid that it's elevated from the ground floor. It touches the site minimally, the least amount we have the least amount of material on the ground floor so that it's all open. That allows this elevated grid to cover the entire site, to hug the existing buildings, to bridge over the canals, to connect spaces of different nature, but also it allows for the landscape to grow continuously throughout the entire site. Here you can see a section and how the whole building is elevated all throughout, and it touches the ground in these very minimal points that allow for nature to grow and expand. And that also creates this open ground floor that invites people in. We're working with the concept of a historical city center or a community center that is full of cafes, of shops, of activities, activities that are not planned, informal gatherings between people. You can run into people that you know here. It's just like the street of a city center that wants to continue the center of Durrës to this site. And then this strategy of elevating the whole project also serves as a preventive measure for a flooding scenario, of course. So again, this is an open system. We didn't want to think of an enclosed plan, but something that grows over time in accordance to the university needs. We're envisioning one first phase in this corner of the site that includes residential parking, it includes sport facilities and library, which are the main uses that students are going to require from the first moment, but also includes the innovation center so that the university can make some revenue from the very start of the development through the collaboration with private entities. Once that first phase is completed, they can jump into building the rectorate, the multifunctional center, the auditorium, and further sports facility, and then continue to build parking and residences all throughout. And potentially in the future, the university can either expand out of the current site, or it can become the role model for other institutions and constructions to follow the same example. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. That same incremental nature of the project was projected to the section. So it's all a prefabricated structure, and you can take some of the floor plate pieces in or out to create double or height spaces within the same building. And in fact, some of the branches that we're showing in the state of the project depicted in the plan or in the model are space reserves intended to be colonized in the future for additional uses. Once we had this grid, this continuous grid of a building, this regular system, we started to think of how to break it up, how to introduce movements that were not as planned. And to that end, we collaborated with local artist Ledia Costandini, who started to look at painting as a reference. She looked at the work by Paul Cleo, by John Miro, or by Ibrahim Kodra. And by analyzing and deconstructing Kodra's work, she developed this super interesting language of recurring shapes in his work. So, for example, Kodra always uses similar shapes for depicting the eyes of his subjects, or the mouths, or the hands, but they're all organized throughout these regular grids. And through analyzing those motifs, she translated them into this language of urban furniture, of pieces of devices that can serve for gathering, for sheltering, for lighting, or air conditioning. And the architecture itself also has a few moments that stand out of the norm. So we have this clock tower that can become the icon, the symbol of the campus, or the auditorium that is not intended to function as a conventional lecture hall, but rather as an open forum where everything can happen. And now Anna is going to talk a little further on the landscape.
Which is
the big one.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is not a campus. We are a few kilometers north. And what I love about this image is the fact that we can see almost in real time a big geomorphological process, sea becoming land, brought here by the rivers that flow into the Adriatic, then transformed into agriculture. But the soil breathes, and all these alluvials and salt beneath stubbornly try to reappear. At the scale of our campus, we can see exactly the same thing. These tracks, patches, organic shapes, in total contrast with the imposed grid. So this ground is in motion. It has always been. And we became even more curious about this. So based on diverse geological studies we found, they confirm what the historical maps already showed us, the fact that here was proper sea, then marshland, then transformed slowly in agriculture. But the most interesting thing is, as long this irrigation communist system worked, the image of this grid was perfect for years, we can see in different images, but as long as they stopped working, everything exploded. The sea, the salt, and and different patches appear, and together with human intervention, we can see it happening. This is only 3 years succession. Some plants disappeared, others colonized, and shapes and patches exploded, as I said. So we decided that our project starts from here. The fact that we don't want to block this movement, but work with it and even try to reproduce it at the scale of our campus. So the project is everything is around this existing canal, silted one, which became the backbone of a productive area, based in various degrees, based on soil conditions, so from semi-salt experimental crops to more adaptive, rather small-scale orchards. And on both sides, we have gardens with different characteristics, more succession gardens on this side, so drier, more close to what we already have. And on the other side, more lush and mounds with Mediterranean vegetation. And between the water in different shapes, basins, channels, and rain gardens, but we'll talk after. So this is our proposal with different overlapping layers of small and soft topography, water, different layers of vegetation, pads, but I think what brings everything to life is exactly this furniture, this like scattered like confetti around all the campus. And the rainwater. The roof water, it's captured, but part of it is also flows through all these channels and fringe basins to flow out the salt from the soil, from the surrounding soil, and then it's filtered through vegetation and gravel, and also captured for irrigation. We really analyzed a lot of species based on different soil conditions, salt, semi-salt, but also humidity or exposure, and all the biodiversity that comes together. What I think is very important, it's the fact that this water system that we imagine can work also as a sponge in flood conditions. The existing canals don't work, and we don't try to repair it through this project, but we try to reproduce exactly its logic at a smaller scale, more resilient. And our project can be seen as a prototype. It can be easily reproduced in the neighborhood side. But what I think is the most important is that we didn't try to impose ourselves, but listen to the soil conditions and work with them.
Thank you so much, Anna. In terms of the program of the project, we allocated all of the residential bedrooms to the perimeter of the site so that they all are looking outside and they have a similar sun incidence condition, while the interior of the grid is organized in different bands, and these bands have different degrees of privacy or publicness in their connection to the main street, being those the most public uses. But the whole system is thought out on a strict 10 by 10 meter grid, and that is able to allocate all of the different uses that the university is currently asking for. So the idea here is that the university can change the uses of any of the spaces. Some spaces can be added, some can be extended or shrunk over time in accordance to whatever their needs are. Two of the big quads in the grid are actually enclosed by skylights to build up spaces for the sports court, and the swimming pool. And these skylights are openable with sliding glaze panels so that they can be open air whenever there's optimal weather conditions. Here you can see the swimming pool quad in connection to the surrounding adjacent vegetated gardens. And in terms of the mobility, we established new routes for cars, for bicycles, which you can see in red looping all around the site, and for pedestrian entrances into the main entrance plaza. And that pedestrian route is linked to a new mobility hub connected to the planned train line in the future. Regarding parking, we are allocated all the parking spaces to the elevated first floor, to the perimeter. And the idea here is that over time, the university is going to have more students sleeping in, but the need for cars is going to shrink over time because the public transportation system is going to be improved in the city of Durrës. So over time, we're going to need less private cars, less parking spaces, but more residential units. So all of the parking is reversible and can be used for other programs. In terms of the structural system, the construction system, it's built out of concrete in the lower level to use a material that is resistant to weathering and to humidity, but the upper levels is all projected in prefabricated wooden pieces so that we minimize the carbon footprint of the entire campus. And that also gives an incredible warmth to all the interior spaces, as you can see in this library rendering. The whole system is also thought out as an industrialized prefabricated kit of parts, so that everything is done off-site and then assembled on-site in a very quickly, very inexpensive.
Just to remind you the time.
Yes, thank you, Ala. And very efficient way. And here in the section, you can see that the building benefits from cross-ventilation all throughout, and it has a system of automated fabric awnings that regulate the sun incidence so that we can minimize the amount of mechanical air conditioning or heating that you need in each of the spaces. The building also has a vast surface covered with PV panels on the rooftop, and that together with a geothermal well system spanning throughout the entire site can generate energy to feed the entire campus. So it would be a self-sufficient building from a power point of view. The rooftop also has a running track looping throughout the entire perimeter, as well as some leisure spaces overlooking the views of the surrounding marshland. And that's it. Thank you very much.
You made it on time.
Now the jury.
If you guys have any more energy for questions, go ahead.
I would like to ask a question. When you look at the final image that you just had of this long, long building, it looks very much like a very large building. The way you explained it in the beginning was very much, it's something that happens over time, it's flexible, it's adaptable. How do we have to read the architectural elements that in the end you described also as prefab, industrialized material? Do we have to imagine this as one architecture kind of like coming over 100 years and like just being the same all the time? Or do we have to imagine this is more or less now just a cliche, and then in the end actually it will be like maybe also evolving as architecture over time? And do we imagine this really large building looking like this, like one large building, or do we imagine it like a historical city that grows over time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thanks so much. It's true that, I mean, as I mentioned, we always intend for this system to grow and shrink and change over time. And what we're showing on our plans and the model is basically the solution that complies with all of the program requirements reflected on the prompt. But it's true that that evolution is going to happen throughout a big span of time, so the architectural solutions might change. We are applying a consistent solution right now because that's a system that we think works better as we speak. But you know, as the project evolves or architecture evolves in terms of materials and technology over time, I think that it would be really interesting to see more of a patchwork, no? Where different phases executed in different times can show different solutions. And of course, you can also retrofit the parts that were done first, and those can also change over time. So not only the new ones will look different, but the old ones can also be adjusted over time. So it's true that you can end up with a patchwork of solutions that give some richness to the system and also stands as a witness of the evolution of architectural solutions over time.
Well, to add on it, I would say that in a very conscious way, we didn't develop any timeline, because it would depend on the necessities and requirements that come from the university. So we even thought about it, if it makes sense to have that timeline, but that would come depending on those specific requirements. So we didn't really think the building as a final result. We don't think about the moment in which the building would be open, but it would be a kind of evolving body that will change over time.
Your colleague before said that they decided to have a building that was 3 levels high in order not to have elevators. Yours is 4. Do you have elevators?
We do have elevators, yes. So we're also making a point for universal accessibility, of course, and we do have staircases on every intersection of the different branches of the project, and we have elevator shafts going with those, yes.
And how would somebody, like somebody mentioned before, and I think it's the experience of all of us, that university building can be very confusing. Like, for instance, the school where I teach, where I never know where to go. And these might be quite confusing as well, I suspect. Like, imagine being the parents of a student visiting on an occasion, and how do people orient into
how do you navigate the grid?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Yeah. No, I think that's a great point as well. We try. I mean, within the consistency of the system, a system where you can change every piece of the program, as we mentioned before, we try to establish a logic for the uses that we know we need today according to the prompt. So that's the reason we try to organize it in a very logical way in relationship to the access from the main street. So here you have the most public spaces where you have all of your multifunctional center together with the auditorium and the rectorate that would welcome people from outside the university in a more continuous schedule. Here in the area, you have the spaces that are for collective activities and might receive people from other universities, for example. So you have the Innovation Center and the sports facilities. Then you have the yellow spaces that are spaces for more individual activities, for studying, and that's where the whole library goes. And then you have the residential spaces. So these are all the common spaces for the residences and the bedrooms that are all facing a similar position in the perimeter. So once you enter the campus from the main street, sorry, I'm gonna go to this plan. Once you enter from the main street, you encounter this entrance plaza, and from that plaza you go a number of corridors in relation to the publicness of the activity that you're coming to the campus for. So the most public ones are here, and then you go deeper into the campus as you're gonna face more private activities, or if you're a resident, of course. So, within the consistency and homogeneity of the system, we also try to organize things through a criteria of strategical connections.
I would like to add that there's also in a way the hierarchy of the complex. It doesn't come from the buildings themselves, but from the corridors.
There are courtyards, different spaces, different sizes. They have different type of vegetations, different type of colors, textures, smells. So that's how we develop certain hierarchy within the system of the project.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well for the really complete and beautiful presentation and the work. It's also really well explained. So I'm going to just ask a couple of questions that you mentioned earlier about the phasing, because intentionally you are not showing how this system, and you emphasize the word system several times, it's not a project, it's a system, that how can this system can be developed, or how the system can grow. So the question would be, you are showing here the maximum version density of the system. Is this the density that it's needed? Or, because I'm imagining within this system having like more permeability, maybe missing teeth here and there, so you could have like more permeability also in the visual sense, and being also a very nice image of the project. So is this density needed to fulfill the program, or it's more dense than the program?
So for now, the stage that we're showing, it does respond to the program in the prompt. It's true that the program was vague in some points because they were given the square footage of some of the pieces of the program, or the capacity number of people for others, or some others didn't have any of the two. So we made our best estimation for whatever program was included in the prompt. But again, like, I think that the value of this system is that it's something that, you know, that program was established through, I guess, a plan for growth from the university. But the university can decide that instead of doing housing for, 4,000 students, they're just going to do for 2,000 right now. Or that instead of having like such a large library, maybe they want to invest in half the library. So I think that once a university carries out their actual feasibility plans in accordance to whatever budget they have at a time, they can decide to do the project larger or smaller. So that, we're designing these modules that can be replicated, and they can decide how many of them they implement at a time. So that's really the value of thinking of a system and not of an enclosed building or of a frozen building. Thank you.
I think it's quite an interesting proposal how to deal with how can a school change. Because this is in the brief also a key question, right? How much space you need for a startup, how much you dedicate to research, how much to housing, can the housing change, and to have this modularity of a grid of 10 by 10 meter and say, well, this is the, let's say, longest you can do for having cross ventilation. The smallest you have to do to keep up certain large-scale programs. I think that could be quite interesting. The price to pay would be the library, for example, as it is foreseen as a main attractor, would be just a temporary, let's say, attraction, and the whole building is nearly like a stage design, and then it will depend on the books that you have there, how you make the display of the books to still use it as an attractor. The same is for, let's say, that there's no hierarchy in the building, right? There's not, as we saw in the previous building, the big tower, where the power is accumulated and the rector is probably on top of the tower. Here you need an address, you need a street number, you need an orientation system. It's also, I think, interesting and strong statement for avoiding any notion of hierarchy in a university.
Yeah, for us that was a really important point, and it talks back to Lorena's question before, it's not only that you can build more or less modules as the university needs more or less square footage, it's also the capacity to change the program of the existing modules. So, if they build a large multifunctional center and throughout time they realize that they don't need so many meeting spaces, but they need more library or more residences, they can occupy that with other programs. And that's very much the case of the parking lot, as I explained before. I think that parking spaces, they can take a lot of effort and square footage right now, but they will do less in the future. So it was very important for us to have these reversible spaces for all the programs, but especially parking that can be used for other pieces of program. And they're all homogeneous, and it depends on the implementation of the interior partitions and layouts to differentiate spaces, as you said.
If I can just add the question, because you are presenting a beautiful solution, and congratulations for your very careful work, in a way that is the dream of every master plan, because it is totally flexible, but still it has a totally architectonic, coherent proposal. So what are the variables and what is the fixed thing? If technology take you to change completely the structure of the ground floor, is this allowable? Is this reasonable? What are the rigid parts of your proposal and what are the flexible parts? And also in terms of outdoor spaces, because if you change completely the program, will the outdoor spaces will follow this? Are also they that flexible? Are they a little bit more rigid?
Yeah, of course they are. And in fact, we were imagining, I forgot to tell this, we imagined this because the essence of our concept was the movement, the fact that everything is transforming. So also the landscape, gardens, courtyards, they will evolve over time. I mean, the succession ones, more drier, will become more lush as soon as the soil becomes, forgot about the salt. So everything is movable, changeable, and with us or without us, anyway, it will happen. So the landscape is not a fixed element, as we know.
Yeah, I think that for the ground floor, that's what we really like about the overall strategy. Like the landscape, it was of course going to change throughout time as the soil is regenerated and other species start to grow. But the non-landscape areas as well, like we like for that ground floor to be as informal as possible, so that all of the activities that happen in a regular city center can happen here as well, and it really feels like the extension of the city center of Durrës. Like, as I mentioned before, the quality here is that you can open a shop in a place, then move it to somewhere else, have cafes, and have people running into each other. There is that level of informality that we didn't want to mess up with. We really wanted to preserve in the campus so that it feels like a town for the students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Zonja dhe zotrinj, japim fjalën Ministres së Kulturës, zonjës Mirela Kumbaro, për fjalën përmbylse.
Okay, as of September 2025, I'm the Minister of Education, but instead I see it as a compliment when people call me Minister of Culture instead. That was in my past, but still, I'm proud of what I've done. Okay, so 5 international architectural studios with Albanian colleagues introduced to us their ideas about the way they see the campus. but also they showed us a very important element. We had artists like Blair Tacambo, Chris Sicco, Ledia Costantini, and Adrian Pazzi. What this confirms, in actual fact, is that architecture isn't simply about a building's functioning, but on the contrary, for a while it has been a lot more than that. It's about aesthetic education. It is, today, ever more, also a need for societies, for us humans, to show that we need the psychology of beautiful things, to find the balance between the need at sustainable developments on the one hand, and the psychology of the users on the other. So not just simply see them as clients or as users, but also as active actors of architecture. Another station of today's event, a very interesting event, and I called it a station intentionally, not just a juncture or a moment, was the argument that actually took a bit more time in the Q&A sessions between the competitors and the members of the jury. What I mean to say is that all of the discussions that took place were on the landscape, the respect to environment, nature, the ecological approach, even the agricultural one. So not only in terms of the project itself or the building, the construction, but also vis-à-vis the context that this place is taking place in, but also the vegetation, the species, ecological corridors, water, the quality of the construction elements that were proposed, and without leaving aside another dimension which we found several times as very important. So it's not only about the rapport between the projects themselves and the environment, but also the rapport of future inhabitants with the landscape and the ecology that they will spend their time in. An active rapport, proactive one as well, and not just as people who are moving in and out and use these environs without becoming a member of the ecosystem, but as authors of this ecosystem instead. So what I'm talking about is the sociological and the human approach, which intertwines itself with nature. And Albania is a small country, but the natural and environmental ecosystem cannot do without humans living in it and residing in it, especially those who will do so in the future. So this interaction between the environment, landscape, the present, and the future, we saw this in almost, not in almost, actually, in all of the presentations. Feasibility, too, played a very important role. It is an element which, for me personally, as a minister, as the line ministry that budgets these types of projects, and I always bear it in mind, this is another very important element of these types of projects. So it is now time, because I do not wish to keep you. The jury will withdraw to decide. Time for you and for all of us, other than the jury, to relax a little, because today's competition, just as any other competition, has some rules, and one of it is timing. It was violated or infringed by both the jury and the competitors, but this clearly shows the depth, the passion of the competitors, for whom I wish to thank, but also the attention and the huge curiosity of the members of the jury to discuss as much as possible, not just on the construction elements, but on the vision, the philosophy, and the entire concept presented by each master plan proposed. So it was worth going above the time allocated, but now we will also hear the advice of the students. The jury will have its own discussion. So the final decision, contrary to what we had decided, will be given at 1800 hours. So after the jury has had enough time and has actually analyzed every single element, it will decide. And as the Prime Minister said, with five studios, there will only be one winner. But at the end of the day, we're all on board of the fact that the public interest on an ecosystem in which knowledge must be developed in harmony with the environment, architecture as a social social concept and with the aesthetics of mind is what brings us together. So thank you very, 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 very much for your dedication, for this gigantic work that you have done, and I look forward to be able to find out who the winner will be. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy yourselves if you can.